Now, one of the more important decisions that the marketing department is tasked with making is the decision or the determination of the price of a product. And this decision is obviously taken when a product is launched and also when the company feels the need to change the price, whether that be an increase or a decrease on the price of the product. The decision will rest with the marketing department as they have the most direct line with the consumers through the market research that they have been conducting. And price is an important decision because it has a direct impact on the quantity demanded for that product. And in order to determine the relationship between the price of a product and the quantity that would be demanded by the consumers, which in turn means the sales that will be made by the seller, is a very important relationship. And then this concept of price elasticity helps us to understand or helps us to make the decision of pricing as the marketing decision. Now, in terms of its definition, price elasticity is it measures the responsiveness of quantity demanded when the price of a product changes. Now, it's simply what it says is that as the marketing department, as the business, you want to see before making the change that how the consumers are going to react to your decision of changing the price, whether that's an increase or a decrease. Now, at this point, it is important to remember that this calculation is done before the price is changed and not after to see how the reaction has been. Of course, you want to see how the result is going to be before making the change, or at least have some estimation or some prediction as to how it might turn out. And in order to make that prediction, this calculation of PED is used by the marketing department. Now, there's a simple rule when it comes to PED, and for that, we just need to compare what price and quantity have between them as a relationship. And we have discussed this before as well that whenever you increase, and it's logical, you would also agree with me on this, that whenever you see an increase in the price of a product, you will see a decrease in the quantity demanded for the product from the consumers. And the reverse is also true. When you decrease the price of a product, you will see an increase in the quantity demanded of that product. Now, we call this, as we can clearly see that they work in opposite directions, we call this an inverse relationship. When one goes up, the other comes down. That's price and quantity. But as a business, we're not sure by how much. And we can see the change, we can see that it's going to be inverse, but we're not yet able to determine how much the change is going to be. Is it going to be enough for us to make the decision of price change? Would it help us to resist the decision? That measure is what PED brings to this calculation, the ability to predict how the consumers are going to react once you decide to change the price of your product. And the way to calculate PED, price elasticity demand, is using this formula, which is percentage change in quantity demanded upon percentage change in price. Percentage change in quantity demanded upon percentage change in price. And we will look at an example in a minute, but whatever the result of this is going to be, is going to have a significance for the decision of the price change. And whatever this answer is, as I mark it X, what you have to remember is the number 1. Okay, the number 1 is a very special number when it comes to the calculation of PED. And as you see in the boxes below, I'm just going to divide that into 3 possibilities. That your answer could be equal to 1, it could be less than 1, or it could be greater than 1. So the number 1 helps us to make 3 very, very distinct regions where we can see that the answers will have different meanings depending on which side of the number 1 you end up on. And each of these categories have a meaning. If your answer is equal to 1, we call that unitary elastic. And if your answer is greater than 1, we call it elastic, starting with an E. And if it's less than 1, we would call it inelastic. Now, each of these categories have a meaning. They tell the company something very special when they figure out these numbers. And if you look at elastic, when it's greater than 1, it simply means that the change in quantity demanded in response will be much greater than change in price. Okay, now let me show you visually what that means. What it simply means is that if the company decides to increase the price by a little bit, as shown by a little arrow here, the change in quantity is going to be much larger in response. Okay, that's what elastic means. A little change in price will bring about a huge change in quantity. And the reverse will also be true, of course, when if you reduce the price by a little bit, you will see a greater increase in the quantity demanded of that product. So the change is amplified. It's much larger when you look at elastic demand. When we talk about inelastic demand, that means that the change in quantity demanded in response would be much smaller in relationship to the change in price. And once again, if we look at it through a comparison between price and quantity, if you increase the price by a lot, as shown by a large broken arrow here, the change in quantity is going to be relatively small in response. And of course, the reverse is also true. A huge reduction in price still will only result in a small increase in the quantity demanded. And finally, when we look at unitary elastic, it simply means that the change in quantity is going to be exactly equal to the change in price in percentage terms, of course. Remember, in PED, we are constantly evaluating percentage changes, not absolute changes. So that's the theory part of price elasticity of demand, where you first have to understand what it does. It shows the relationship between price and quantity. We know that it is an inverse relationship, and in order to calculate PED, we use the formula you see on the screen, and the result of this formula, the significance, the number 1 holds a huge significance, because the result would either be equal to 1, greater than 1, or less than 1. And depending on what that number is, it would either be elastic, inelastic, or unitary elastic. And we now know what that means. It's just simply the extent of change as a result of the change in price. Now, this calculation is used by the marketing department to figure out whether we should go ahead with a price change or not. And in your exams, this question will appear in paper 2, which is a case study paper. You have 2 data response questions. You have to answer both. And part B1 will always be a calculation question from your case study paper. So that's the next part of this topic, where I'm going to show you how to solve an actual past paper if such a question appears.
If you like the content you just saw and all the other content that is on my website, then you need to head over to altacademy.org, where you will find more content, not only of my subject, but also 5 other subjects. So go there.